So what is going on, everyone? Fernando Silva here with another video, and today we're going to be talking about this M1 MacBook Air that I have right in front of me. It's been about a month since I picked it up, and I've been actually loving this thing, and it's been really impressive. So I want to walk you guys through exactly my thoughts, my process, and whether or not I recommend it to you guys or not after 1 month of use. So let's get right into it. So to make this review as easy to follow and digest, I'm going to break this down into 3 different categories. And the 3 categories are battery life, price to performance ratio, and then M1 compatibility, because those are the 3 main things that Apple really touched on. So they touched on battery performance, they touched on overall performance, and then they touched on this transition of going from Intel to M1 and making sure all the applications work on the M1 chip. So those are the 3 categories that I'm going to touch on, because those are the ones that I see firsthand as well, guys. So without further ado, let's talk about battery life. So when Apple announced their M1 Mac lineup, obviously the M1 Mac Mini doesn't have a battery life component because it's always plugged in, but then they brought out the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro. With the MacBook Air, they're telling us 18 hours of battery life, and then the MacBook Pro about 20 hours. The 18 hours of battery life are pretty much only there when you're in a perfect situation. So it probably means that you're running native M1 MacBook apps, you're running probably native Apple applications, you're in their ecosystem, and then you're running it how they want you to run it, right? So I don't think the 18 hours is a realistic number, but what you get out of this is still pretty insane. So I'm gonna pull up the actual battery performance over here, so my overall usage history, right? And I'm gonna go over the last 10 days, and this gives you guys a good idea of what my usage is like on the battery of this M1 MacBook Air. And for the most part, I do keep it plugged in because it's usually closed shut on the left side of my actual desk, and I use it kind of as a desk setup. But last week I kept it off charge. I kept it just as a laptop, right? And I worked down here. So this isn't my office space, but I worked down here because I wanted to test out the battery life. And you guys can see that with no issues, screen on time, I was getting 6, 7, 8, 9 hours of screen on time on a single charge, and it would last the next day, right? So that's the beautiful thing about it. I would probably say that I get anywhere from 12 to 14 hours of battery life. And keep in mind, I'm not in the most optimal situations in terms of the software that I use. So what that means is I'm on Chrome a lot, I'm watching a lot of video, FaceTime is always on as well, multiple tabs. I'm talking about 50 tabs in Chrome that I'm usually running, mostly LinkedIn tabs, but they're also always running, always on, always fetching information. So I'm probably not running the best performance to software ratio, but for me, it's lasted anywhere from 12 to 14 hours with no problems. And again, I'm mostly at home, so battery life really isn't an issue, but if you guys are out and about, if you do need something that stays away from a plug, that stays away from an external battery, this is the best thing that I've seen on the market so far, and battery life has just been immaculate. I don't know if I get to that 18-hour point of battery life, but I do get anywhere from 12 to 14 hours, which again, is very impressive. So now let's step into category 2, which is this price to performance ratio. And the reason I didn't do just performance is because you have to take into account how much this thing costs. I'm gonna walk you guys through how I purchased this specific MacBook Air. Again, this is the M1 MacBook Air base model. So it's 8 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of storage, and that is it. And this baseline MacBook Air retails for $1,000, so $999 from the Apple Store. And then if you guys watch my education store video, you guys know that you're able to take $100 off. I believe it's mostly US based. I'm not 100% sure how it works overseas, but basically go into the education store and everything is $100 off. So this thing was actually $899. And then not only that, I traded in my older MacBook Air, which I did buy in 2020, so I did take a big loss on that one. I did purchase the i5 MacBook Air back in June of this year, so I traded that one in towards this MacBook Air. I got around $670. So all in all, I'm paying $19 a month over 12 months, so about $220 is what I paid for this MacBook Air, because I use the Apple Card to finance it, guys. So if you guys are in the Apple ecosystem and want to pay 0 APR, Apple Card is the way to go. But that's how I purchased this thing. So for me, this is $19 a month. And now I know not everybody has that same situation, but still, for $899, this computer is gonna be very hard to beat from a performance to price standpoint, and even just a performance standpoint. So let's talk about the power of this thing, right? And I'm also gonna walk you guys through what I use it for on a day-to-day basis. So from a power standpoint, I'm sure everybody has seen all the Geekbench scores. You guys see all the single core stats, the multi-core stats, and yes, there's a big wow factor when it comes to these Geekbench scores, because people are like, wow, these M1 chips are amazing. They finally brought it from iOS and iPadOS into these machines, which is what everybody wanted, because they wanted to be able to run something as efficient as iOS and iPadOS, but run macOS with it. that was kind of the biggest thing that people wanted. People loved the iPad, people loved how quick it was to respond, how it has an auto on feature, and people just wanted to bring that over to a desktop class operating system. And that's what Apple has done here. So again, from a power standpoint, if you're running native Apple ecosystem applications, this thing is going to be the best thing on the market for you, period. If you're an iWorks person, Safari, Apple Notes, iMovie, Final Cut Pro, any of those applications that are built by Apple for Apple, you're gonna be in a world of your own. That's probably gonna get you that 18 hours of battery life. That's probably gonna get you the most optimized situation where this computer, there's gonna be nothing better on the market for that. But now, something that Apple has been able to do, which Microsoft actually failed at last year when they came out with their Surface Pro X, was get these third-party developers to adopt the M1 language, to adopt that ARM architecture. Because when the Surface Pro X came out last year, yes, it was a very cool device, it had a lot of promise, but no applications worked on it because nobody was coding for that architecture, and then they also didn't have a great translation layer, which Apple does. So lo and behold, we have this Apple effect. So for instance, the Apple effect has taken over already to the point where Microsoft has created their Microsoft Suite and already converted it to M1, so you don't have to worry about a translation layer. Not every single app from Microsoft has been translated over, but the main ones. So Outlook, PowerPoint, Word, Excel, those are all the main ones that people wanted. Those are already ready to go for the M1. Now there's still OneDrive and Teams and those other ones that are needed to be translated over to the M1, but it'll get there. And not only that, but those I use on a daily basis, and all they're doing is being translated through Rosetta, and that works amazingly. So you guys have seen my video on the Microsoft series. You saw how quickly all these applications open, how quickly they all respond, and it's just night and day difference, especially in comparison with the device that I bought in June of 2020 as a brand new device. That MacBook Air, once Microsoft Teams was open, could not run anything else, especially if I was video chatting on Microsoft Teams. The entire computer would basically shut down. So it's crazy to see that the only difference between the model that I had in June and this model is the fact that the i5 chip got replaced with the M1 chip. Everything else is exactly the same. Still 8 gigs of RAM, still 256 gigabytes of storage. So the fact that they just swapped out one component and kind of changed the experience of the entire device is pretty freaking amazing. And now this is a perfect segue to go into category 3, which is the M1 compatibility. So again, the M1 compatibility was the biggest hurdle that Apple is going to be going through, especially for these next, I want to say 3 to 12 months. People are going to want their applications to work exactly how Apple intended them to work. So there's going to be a little bit of a transition. But in the meantime, Rosetta 2 is out. So Rosetta, it's an application that's built into every single Mac OS system that runs an M1 chip, and you don't even need to know that it's there. So basically every time you open a non-M1 compatible application, so an Intel-based application, Rosetta runs one time. It does pop up, so it's not really in the back end because you do see it happening, but it runs one time with that application, and then the application pretty much runs flawlessly. Right now, I'm not a Premiere Pro user. I don't use the Adobe Suite. I have heard a little bit of hit or misses with the Adobe Suite depending on which computer you have, depending on how much RAM you have. So if you have an 8 gigabyte model running all the Adobe Suite applications and you're an intense user, maybe go with a little bit more RAM because that's what's needed. But for what I use it for, so for Chrome, Safari, the Microsoft Suite, LinkedIn, FaceTiming, messages, all of those things that I run on a day-to-day basis work magically on this M1 MacBook, and some of them are Intel-based applications, and some of them are M1-based applications, and you really can't tell the difference. Like, I cannot tell the difference between Outlook running as an M1 application and Teams running as an Intel-based application because they talk so well, they work so well, and they work very rapidly. So all in all, very happy with this transitional state that we're in with this M1 MacBook, and the thing is that they can only get better. So all in all, that is my review of 1 month later for this MacBook Air M1 series. In my opinion, this is the best bang for buck. Unless you're a diehard Windows person that needs to be in Windows for some odd reason, this is the, I think the computer of 2020. This is the #1 computer because of price, because of performance, because of battery life, and overall quality as well, because you're still getting an Apple computer, so it's still great build quality. Yes, it's a little dated, you're still rocking a 13-inch screen, but you still have a Retina display. It's made out of aluminum, the keyboard is amazing, the webcam is still terrible, unfortunately, but that's the only real knock that I have on this computer, it's just the webcam. So overall, it gets my stamp of approval. Would I get this over an iPad Pro? It really just depends. I still think the iPad Pro is a more fun device to use. I prefer to use it whenever I'm doing any video editing, any YouTube creator stuff, even emails for work and things of that nature, because with the iPad Pro, you're way more honed in on the tasks that you have to do versus on the MacBook Air, especially if you have a secondary monitor, you can have a million things open, no problem. So you kind of lose focus a little bit. So I still prefer the iPad Pro, but for the price, it's hard not to recommend this M1 MacBook Air because it's just gonna get better, guys. So that's gonna do it for this video. Hopefully this kind of swayed somebody that was debating whether or not they should go with the MacBook Air M1 series or the Intel series. Just make sure that your application does work. Make sure you go on blogs, make sure you go on forums. They should work. I haven't had a single issue with any application not working. I've heard of some people with like little indie apps that don't work, like Pixelmator, but even then, those switch quickly into the M1 series. So do your research before jumping fully into this M1 ecosystem, but so far I've been loving it, and I'm still an iPad Pro first user, but this thing is giving the iPad a run for its money. But that's gonna do it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and until next time.